hand over to you, Lauren, to introduce what we're going to be talking about today.
Thanks very much, Paul, and thanks very much to Foundations for putting on this session. Oh God, now I'm regretting not having slides because you're just going to have to look at my massive face for a few minutes. So apologies for that. But I'm Lauren, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am one of the professional advisors at the Royal College of Occupational Therapists, and I am a very proud housing occupational therapist by background. So I'm especially happy to be with you all, albeit virtually. And it's great to see some familiar names in the attendee list from my housing days as well. So I hope everyone is doing really, really well. I've been with the college now since January last year, so it's been a bit of a roller coaster for obvious reasons. But my role at ARCOT covers housing and also rehabilitation. And for the last 16 months, I've been doing a large amount of work on COVID, which I'm sure is a familiar feeling for all of you. And I'm not actually going to say very much today. I think it's far more important that you hear from our other colleagues who are out there doing the doing. But I was very pleased to be invited by Paul and colleagues at Foundations to say a little bit about kind of our perspective on the adaptations system at the moment. And I know from discussions that I've been having with people like Lorraine at Foundations and with OTs out in social care and housing and from our home improvement colleagues, that it's been an extremely challenging time for lots of you, and that many of you are now finding yourselves in a situation where the demand for your services has increased as a result of the pandemic. And that's unsurprising, really, given that some services were suspended or restricted for stretches of lockdown. I'm sure that's a familiar scenario for lots of you, but also because, sadly, many people will have deconditioned or developed new and additional health needs while they've been shielding and self-isolating. And of course, we now know that lots of people are affected by long COVID, and the long-term implications of that on people's health and care needs remains to be seen. And that is all really concerning for occupational therapists and all of our colleagues, all of you out there who are involved in providing home adaptations, because we can't just wave a magic wand and suddenly increase the numbers of people working in home adaptation services to meet that additional demand. For various reasons, I would suggest that that's pretty unrealistic in most places. So there is a clear balance that needs to be struck between providing people with the adaptations that they need in a timely way and not putting additional strain on staff members who are probably pretty exhausted, I would suggest, and whose own well-being needs taking care of. And I'm really looking forward to hearing Rachel and Melanie and Jane and Kate talking today about how they have addressed that challenge in their own teams, because the pandemic has thrown up lots of challenges, but it's also sparked lots of innovation and lots of creative problem solving. And in some areas, it's created much better communication and collaboration between the different professionals and organisations involved in the adaptation system, which is no bad thing at all, albeit it's arisen out of necessity as a way to navigate the pandemic. But there's definitely learning and working principles that we can take forward into the future. Because I think we have to be honest that there were lots of inefficiencies in the delivery of adaptations even before the pandemic. I know that many of you will already be familiar with the DFG review from 2018 and the ARCOT publication, Adaptations Without Delay, both of which Rachel Russell was heavily involved with. And both of these reports identify areas where there are common bottlenecks and hold-ups in the adaptations process. And quite commonly, these occur at the point of handover between teams and between professionals. And also because the adaptations workforce, including occupational therapists, aren't being used in the most effective way. So their particular skills aren't always being put to the best use. And that's not in every scenario. I know there are many brilliant teams out there, and I'm sure that some of you belong to them, but there's quite a lot of room for improvement in quite a lot of services, I would suggest. And I'm not going to say much more about that, especially when we have one of the authors of those documents with us who is about to present to us herself. But just to say that the Arcot and the Housing Lynn, who co-produced Adaptations Without Delay, we did run a survey towards the end of last year, asking people who had read Adaptations Without Delay to reflect on how they had used the report, and to reflect on any changes that they had made to their adaptations processes as a result. And one of the key themes that people reflected was the importance of effective interprofessional communication and collaboration, and how when it exists, it's really enabling. It helps everyone to see the bigger picture of the process, and to work together to bring about positive changes. And when it's lacking, how stifling that can be to solving problems and making progress. And finally, another piece of feedback that we had from the survey was that people were really keen to begin to develop tools that would help them to put the principles of Adaptations Without Delay into practice, and to hear service examples from teams who had taken steps to streamline and improve their adaptations processes. And so I'm really thrilled that Rachel, Melanie, Jane and Kate are demonstrating real occupational therapy leadership in this area. And I'd like to thank all of them for their generosity in sharing their learning with us today. And thanks again to Foundations for providing this platform for them to do so. I'm certain that we are all in for a very informative time. So that is it from me. I will shut up, but I will put my email address into the chat bar in just a second. So if anyone wants to connect outside of this event, I would be really, really happy to do so, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for that great introduction.